This is 91.3 FM, WCUW in Worcester, Massachusetts, the Dr.Chris Radio of Horror program. And tonight on Radio of Horror, we have calling all the way from England, we have Gary Smart. He's one of the people behind Cult Screenings, which has a growing library of documentary material coming out. Fright Night, Hellraiser, Return of the Living Dead, and American Werewolf in London are both book documentaries, but the RoboCop, Fright Night, and Hellraiser documentaries are on DVD and Blu-ray. And he's here to talk to us a little bit about his company as well as putting these documentaries together. Thank you for coming on the show with us, Gary.
No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Now, what was the first product that you guys started with Cult Screenings?
I started off before Cult Screenings. Myself and a chap called Christian Sellers, who was a freelance writer for a UK horror magazine called Gore Zone. We got together in about 2008 to talk about the Return of the Living Dead. I knew Don Cowfer and I knew Beverly Randolph, who are both obviously in Return of the Living Dead, as Tina and Ernie. I kind of knew them. I got Don over into the UK to do some shows over here and some conventions. And me and Christian got talking about, obviously, why there wasn't anything, like, retrospective-wise about Return of the Living Dead. A lot of Romero stuff, a lot of Night of the Living Dead, Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, but nothing on O'Bannon's Return of the Living Dead. So we got together, chatted to Beverly and Don, and they got us loads of links, and we decided to write the book, The Complete History of the Return of the Living Dead. That came out in 2010, and straight after that, we were approached by Tommy Hudson, who's known for Never Sleep Again documentaries, Friday the 13th, Scream documentary. He approached us to write the documentary More Brains, A Return to the Living Dead.
Yes.
So once we did that, which was relatively easy, to be honest, because we'd already written the book, so we used the kind of book as a template, so that was quite easy. Once we wrote that, I went away and started doing screenings in the UK of classic films like Return of the Living Dead, and I got Don back over. He did a Q&A, he showed the film. Then I did Hellraiser and Hellraiser 2, Hellbound, and I had Kenneth Branagh, who's Chenard, Simon Bamford, who's Butterball, Nicholas Vince, Chatterer, and Jeff Porter, who's a makeup guy who created all of those characters, and also obviously Pinhead. And I did a Q&A, and after I was sitting there with one of my colleagues, and I was thinking, again, nothing's been done on Hellraiser, no documentaries. We did a bit of research, and then we saw there was going to be an American documentary called Hellraiser Unearthed. In about 2011, I think that was going to be, and that kind of fell flat because various different reasons, but I think one of the biggest reasons was that the makers didn't realise that the majority of the cast and crew from Hellraiser 1 and 2 are Brits, because it was filmed in Britain, British makers and actors, obviously funded by the Americans, by New World, but obviously filmed over here, so virtually everybody that worked on that film lived in the UK. So they were concentrating very much on the later sequels at that time, and that kind of fell apart. So it was kind of an open door for us. Because we got friendly with Jeff and Ken and Simon and Nick, it was kind of, let's get these four people together who we know and build on that. And then literally that just snowballed into Leviathan, which now is a 9-hour documentary, about 4 hours bonus features, and the raw footage of that is about 90 hours of footage.
Wow.
So that's how that happened. And then obviously then we moved on to other projects since.
That is an exhaustive documentary. God, I think it took me a couple weeks between work and stuff to get through it all. I was thinking, I'll do this in like 2 days. No.
It's exhausting. I mean, it's exhausting to make as well because we all had full-time jobs. We filmed it over weekends, and that took us 2 years to film. Really, and that was going obviously to the States as well to interview people like Chris Young and my mind's gone blank. Peter Atkins and Gary Tunnicliffe. So that was a massive project to undertake itself. And what we did, we made a mistake kind of because when we first started doing interviews, we literally put everything but the kitchen sink into the interview questions, and it was 20 pages of questions for people in a very small font. So we had like interview footage of someone, say Nick Vince, one of our first, and Simon Bamford, 3-hour interviews with these people. And obviously that added up to 90 hours in the end of raw footage. And it was too much, and in the end it was too much obviously to collate and obviously edit into a documentary. So with Leviathan, despite the fact we get a lot of positive comments about the length. The fans seem to really enjoy how long it is. I mean, retrospectively now looking back, I think it needs to be tighter, but we get a lot of positivity about it. We learn a lot of things from that, as in to make things tighter. So with Fright Night, I'll talk about that in a bit. That's obviously a lot more tighter now as a documentary, and RoboCop will be even will be the same.
The documentary, when it came in, I love the artwork on the front and the back. You got that slipcase cover,
Yeah.
and your composer for it, Lito Velasco. He's been on the show, and I bought off of him the CDs, the musical soundtrack for Leviathan.
Oh, Lito's amazing. I knew Lito because he worked on More Brains, and being a Return of the Dead fan, and obviously I was involved with the cast and crew of that. We kind of made links on Facebook and whatnot when he was working on More Brains and I was writing it. Became friends online, as you do with a lot of people. And when we started to do Hellraiser, I was thinking, who can we speak to about composing it? I wanted obviously a proper composer. Very much Hellraiser's strong because of the score, the original Hellraiser and Hellraiser 2, because of Chris Young's score. Spoke to Lito, and Lito came straight on board. And you mentioned the artwork on the front cover, which is done by Graham Humphreys. Now, horror fans will know Graham for his work on Nightmare on Elm Street, Return of the Living Dead, The Evil Dead. He's quite a well-known poster artist who still works in the medium with acrylic paints from the 1980s and still doing a lot of work now. Actually, a lot of people are revisiting him. And the new release of Return of the Living Dead by Shout Scream Factory, that's by Graham. So we got Graham on board straight away, and Graham's been amazing to us. So we've really kind of over the last few projects, with Leviathan stuff, people like Lito and Graham coming on board, we kind of built a really nice kind of network of people who are supporting us, but also well known, and obviously make the projects a little bit more unique in kind of the design as well.
There was a couple of people that you guys couldn't get for Leviathan. Are you allowed legally to talk about why regarding these people?
Of course, yeah. I mean, we don't shy away from it at all.
Okay, I mean, like one of them obviously is the actress who played Christy.
Yeah.
I mean, nowhere to be seen in the documentary.
No. Ashley Lawrence, who played Kirsty Cotton, we approached her probably when the first thing we approached, and I think at that time, because obviously we weren't known. I mean, I'd done Return of the Living Dead, but the rest of the crew were known in Britain because our director Kev McDonough, he'd done some films over here, very independent, low budget films. So we're trying to establish ourselves with these people, obviously in the States, of who we were and was this a serious project. And because I think the other documentary had fell flat as well, some of the Harrow people were reluctant to be involved in another one because they committed to one and it dropped. But Ashley was hard to get a hold of. And we finally got hold of Ashley when we got to the States. And at the time, unfortunately, Ashley wasn't well. She does suffer from her eyes and gets quite bad headaches with lighting and that kind of stuff. So when we were actually in the States, we were having a meal with Don Kaufer and Beverly and Mikey Perez, who's working on RoboDoc with us, who also did virtually every single horror documentary ever with Tommy Hudson. He contacted Ashley when we were there, obviously telling her we only had a real short amount of time to do this documentary and get her shot. And unfortunately, at the time, she wasn't well. I said she had these real bad headaches and whatnot.
Yep.
So we just missed time really. And we couldn't hang around waiting another 6 months for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened, which has happened recently, 2 years after, Ashley bumped into Mikey at a convention and said, "When do you want me to do this interview for Leviathan?" It's kind of like that was 2 years ago. So if we ever revisit Leviathan, in a 10 years anniversary edition or something like that, a new edit. We'll make sure we get Ashley again, but it's just one of them things. I think we're scheduling on some people who are busy. Everyone's busy. If you don't get them in a certain period, you lose them a little bit, and you wait a long time for somebody, and you weigh at the pros and cons. And for us, I think with Leviathan, we did say from the outset that we would try to get everybody, we'd ask everybody, and we would make sure that people who had never been interviewed before were involved, and that's people like Jeff Portas, people like David Worley, Robin Vigeon. These are really key people to the Hellraiser films, especially the first two, who have never been on camera before, never give their views, and yet if it wasn't for them, the film wouldn't be there. So it would have been a great, obviously to have Ashley involved,
Hmm.
alongside Claire and Andy and people like that. But it's just one of those things, unfortunately, and we had to live with it, and move on.
Have you ever thought about possibly putting her stuff and anyone else that you got afterwards on a extra bonus discs that people can order from the website exclusively?
I mean, we have thought about that, and we're working on obviously Leviathan now as a book, kind of a companion book to go with all the kind of extended interviews in obviously written form, and obviously all the images that we didn't have on, or what you only see very split second actually in the books themselves. So actually, it's a possibility. As soon as we can get obviously the opportunity to interview her, I mean, RoboDoc at the moment is swamping us, the amount of people involved in that. But if we have opportunity when we go back, we're back in the States in a few weeks, so if we have opportunity to meet Ashley up there again, we will get her on camera. And you never know, so there could be a bonus disc. We are talking about a Blu-ray edition of Leviathan, which will be a new cut of Leviathan, including new interviews, and a bit tighter. And that might be out to celebrate the 30th anniversary next year.
Hmm.
Again, it's really dependent on scheduling, because RoboDoc at the moment, Fright Night has been massive, and RoboDoc I know is going to be huge for us. So it's never say never. If I can get these people and the opportunity's there, I'll get them on camera and we'll archive it until and use it when we need to use it.
That goes into my next question
Yeah,
about Fright Night, which is your next big project, which is slated to come out very soon. Um, Fright Night's been delayed from the original Kickstarter from back in the spring. Now, from what I've read on Facebook that you guys have posted from your official page, that a lot of these delays are coming from not repeating the mistakes of Leviathan and
yeah.
making sure that you get everyone you can possibly get into the documentary, and there have been people added at the last minute.
Yeah, that's the case. I mean, it was supposed to come out, I think, in about we said about February, April time, I think it was.
Yep.
And you know what? It's probably, and I'll be very blunt and honest, it's the stupidity of us really not realizing the enormity of Fright Night. Hellraiser was a very long project to do, and we had different editors for Leviathan, who kind of, again, in retrospect, if I could do it again, I would have done things like differently. We kind of handed over the footage to them with a script edit. They did it, and it was kind of out of our control a little bit as a producer, and obviously my co-producers. And we got the project back, which came edited not the way. Not I'm very happy with Leviathan, but there's things in Leviathan which I think could have been tighter, as I said before. So with Fright Night, we gave this date thinking we could do it in that time. What inevitably happened, we had people like Jan Cassia, we had people like Mark, Brian Wilson, these really key people for Fright Night who came after we did the initial shoot. Came after Christmas time, came in January, February, and it was, again, it was that kind of conversation: do we wait for these people? Do we delay it? And inevitably, the answer was yes. Let's wait. And also, the reason why it's been delayed is because we have a brand new editor called Eastwood Allen. Now, Eastwood's worked on a few documentaries, and he's working on a new Ghostbusters documentary, Clean Up the Streets. Eastwood is a professional editor. He is completely perfectionist as well at his game, and he wants things absolutely perfect. And we've learned a lot from him as well. And one of the things we did learn is that making sure even a 4-minute interview with somebody on a particular subject could be 2 minutes, doesn't have to be four, because it's how you condense that kind of narrative structure and also condense what people are saying to make it more kind of clear and make it a lot more kind of attractive to the viewer. So that has been a very very long process to make sure everything is tighter, which is beyond more than we expected it to be. And also we've hired people like motion graphic designers as well to do some motion art on the images and obviously in the transitions. To make it a bit more appealing, obviously more visual. Fright Night is more comic-y, it's more fun, it's more comedic. So that is being brought into documentary as well. So, I said it was probably for the naivety of us at the start of Kickstarter to think we could get it done in 6 months. Now I know that these documentaries, especially when it's independent like we are, do take a lot longer than that. So, we've apologised, people, and I will continue to apologise that it was delayed, but I can guarantee when people do get this one, they'll be very impressed, and, they'll enjoy it, and they'll understand as well why we've delayed it and why, obviously, we spent extra time to make sure it's right.
Fright Night is probably my favorite two vampire movies, and of course they remade it, and then they had a sequel to a remake, which I can't even remember what the hell happened in that movie. It was so awful. Do you guys touch upon the remakes at all? And is
Yeah.
it too late to put anything in there about Anton Yelchin, who passed away?
No, we put something at the end for Anton.
Okay.
Obviously, the documentary itself is dedicated to Roddy McDowell. The documentary is, but obviously it's important. Someone like Anton Yelchin, who I think did a good turn as Charlie. Someone to die that young and someone to be involved in that franchise, which we're celebrating, is it's important to obviously acknowledge him. Now we do obviously touch upon the remake. We've got to because obviously Chris Sarandon was in it as well, and it's an important part of the legacy. So there is, it's not a massive section of documentary, 10, 15 minutes tops. Obviously, Tom Holland discusses the remake and how he was involved or not involved in that. Chris Sarandon obviously talks about how he was involved and what he thinks of it. And then obviously the rest of the cast and crew who have seen it, they've got memories of it. Obviously, and potentially could have been in it. That's obviously discussed as well. So yeah, we do discuss it. I mean, the second sequel, which is a remake of the remake, is very lightly touched upon. I mean, Tom had some interesting stories about that. But it's very lightly touched upon, really, because again, it's about pacing and it's important part of a legacy. But the most important part is obviously is Fright Night and Fright Night Part Two.
I mean, as far as I'm aware, and you guys are making the documentary, so please correct me. Anton Yelchin's passed away, and Roddy McDowell has passed away. Is that the only cast members we've lost?
No, we've lost Russell Clark as well, who played Val the Vampire in number two. The vampire on the rollerblades.
Yes. Okay.
He passed away in about 2002, I think that was.
Okay.
Herb Jaffe, who was the producer for Fright Night 1 and 2, he passed away in the 90s. We've also lost, my mind's gone blank of his name now, Merrick Butterich, I think his name was, who played Richie in Fright Night 2, also played Captain Kirk's son in Star Trek 2 and 3. He passed away of AIDS in the early 90s. So we lost quite a few people, actually. Some of the producers passed away, and also Jose Menendez, who was the distributor and kind of producer of Fright Night Part 2, potentially Fright Night Part 3. He was obviously murdered by his sons back in 89.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's touched upon in the documentary, of course, because that is a massive reason why Fright Night Part 2 hasn't ever had the release it was supposed to have had, and also why Fright Night Part 3 was completely shelved.
No, and in fact, in the trailer, the director of Halloween 3,
Tommy Lee Wallace.
Yeah, Tommy Lee Wallace. Doesn't he say directly at the camera to go tell he tells the Menendez brothers to go F themselves?
He does, yeah.
I thought that was fantastic. And let me tell you, right after I saw that, I immediately grabbed a friend of mine who has never seen Fright Night Part 2. She's only seen the remake and the original. And she's like, I didn't know they made a sequel. I was like, oh my God, we have to watch it. And we did a fan commentary for it. Which is on my YouTube channel, and I bring up the thing that Tommy Lee Wallace says about the Menendez brothers, telling them to go F themselves.
See, I love Fright Night Part 2. I mean, I love number 1, of course.
Oh my God, let me tell you, I'm gonna. Hopefully, Julia still wants to come on because I asked her if she can come on the show, and she said yeah when the documentary comes out. And I'm making a comic book called Dracula where we gender swap the entire cast, and I'm basing a lot of I'm basing a lot of it on Fright Night Part 2's female vamp Regine, actually. I'm taking scenes from the movie and turning them into scenes for my comic book.
Oh, brilliant. I mean, I love Fright Night Part 2. So but again, it's one of the things, when we started doing documentary, it was supposed to be on Fright Night only. We said, let's not do a documentary on 2 films, because obviously Hellraiser became so big. I love Hellbound. It's my favourite one, I don't mind going on the record saying that. I love Ken Cranham. So I was dead straight away. I wanted to do Hellraiser 2 as well as Hellraiser 1. But we said when we started doing Hellraiser, Fright Night, let's just do number 1. It's 30-year anniversary. Let's do the first film, and then literally snowball like these projects do. Because I love Fright Night 2, I kind of snuck it in a little bit at the end, and then it kind of got bigger. And we got Julie Carmen, we got Brian Thompson, John Grease, Tommy Lee Wallace, Mark Irwin. It just got bigger and bigger. And you know what? And it's out of the documentary. The documentary is about 5 hours long. and 3 hours is about Fright Night 1, and 2 hours is about Fright Night 2. So it's got a good, obviously good 2 hours retrospect documentary about number 2. So I'm really happy about that now.
I don't know what it is about Fright Night, but I put it above like The Lost Boys sometimes in terms of just great horror movies.
I do as well. I mean, I think Tom Holland always says it, and a lot of the fans do. I think it stands out because I think it is a family film now, particularly now it is. And the funny thing is, when we've been at conventions, obviously promoting Hellraiser, and we've done quite a lot in the last year in the UK and one a couple in Germany. The interesting thing is, everybody's drawn to Fright Night. Well, we have our posters on our tables and whatnot, and it's not just. I mean, Hellraiser is kind of I'm a Hellraiser fan, but there's a very kind of stereotypical Hellraiser fan, tattoos, piercings, and whatnot. But how Fright Night, when the fans come over, there's kids, there's people my age in the 30s, there's people in the 50s and the 60s. It's just weird, but it's just completely all generations of people would love Fright Night. And I think Tom Holland says it about Peter Vincent that Peter Vincent's the heart of Fright Night, and that character is so appealing, and the cowardly like kind of line from Wizard of Oz, you kind of just can't help but like him. And I think he carries that film quite a lot, and he's something unique in that film. You don't get that really in things like Lost Boys. I love the Lost Boys. You don't get him out. You don't get him near dark. Someone like Peter, he harkens back to the kind of days of the Hammer horror films with Peter Cushing and whatnot. And I just think that's why I strongly believe the remake kind of failed, because the character of Peter wasn't actually likable, and he wasn't.
No.
He didn't get that kind of cowardly kind of thing, and that kind of, you really backing him, and you really want to see him succeed. And when he does succeed, you're really there with him. And as much as I like David Tennant, he just couldn't, that character being this kind of magician in Las Vegas with some sexy bird with him and whatnot. It just didn't work, and that was a shame, because I really wish they would have just put that kind of older character in, that kind of film star kind of thing. They could have changed it somewhat, of course, for a remake, but I think that the rest of the film works really well. I love the Colin Farrell with the vampire, with the refrigerators downstairs, and the kind of maze of all different cells and whatnot. I love the kind of housing estate feel that people are leaving and whatnot, disappearing. I think the missing link is Peter Vincent and that portrayal of Peter, and that's nothing to do with David. That's obviously what's written on the page.
Do you get Colin Farrell or any of the big Hollywood people in your documentary?
No, of course we approached Colin Farrell and David Tennant and whatnot, but we never heard back from them. That's one of the things. And you know what? We didn't pursue it either. I mean, when we want somebody, we'll pursue it. We'll try every single avenue to get someone, and we have done that. We did it with Clive, for Hellraiser, and we went to his house twice. But again, Clive was really ill, and he was really, really ill when we went there, and he still is now. But we, if we wanted to pursue it, we would have pursued it. But because we really kind of want to concentrate on the originals and just have the cast themselves talk about what their perception of the remake is. I mean, we could have gone to Craig Gillespie as well, who obviously was the director, but we didn't even attempt to look for to engage him, because I said I wanted Chris Sarandon to talk about it, I wanted Tom to talk about it, as we would talk about it as fans. And I think if you start involving people who made it, you can then spend another hour on it then. And he wouldn't do justice for those people to interview him for 2 minutes. It's not fair on them for regards to their schedule and whatnot. So we did that initial contact, and when we heard nothing back, we just never pursued it any further. And I feel that was the right decision to make, really, when you're looking at the original and as a legacy kind of thing.
And of course, we have in honor of the late great Roddy McDowall, we have his. I believe this is. Is this his first action figure based on him, or did he have also one for Planet of the Apes?
He would have had one Planet of the Apes.
Okay.
I think they had the Mego figures back in the 70s.
Yes, and I completely forgot. He was also the voice of the Mad Hatter on the Batman the Animated Series, and he had an action figure for that too.
And he also played the Bookworm in the Batman TV series in the 60s, and there's a figure of him as well.
Oh, okay.
Which came out, again, one of those retro Mego figures.
But this is his first Fright Night action figure, right?
Yeah, it's the first Fright Night action figure. It's the first Peter Vincent. We call it the Great Vampire Killer. because obviously we've got to be careful regards to copyright and whatnot. I mean, Tom owns the character, so Tom's gives us his blessing, and obviously, and Tom's selling the figure on his website and supported it, in prototype stage. Tom approved it. But yeah, so this is the first Peter Vincent figure, and we took a conscious decision. We love the figures which Reaction do. The Hellraiser, and they do Nightmare on Elm Street, and everyone's seen those kind of classic kind of figures, and we took a conscious decision to make Peter like that, in that kind of 80s kind of style figurine. So people who have collected the other figures from Reaction could have that on their shelf with that. We talk about obviously a larger scale figure, but I think I'm really happy with him. I think he's turned out really well. He's got that 80s kind of look to him, which I quite kind of like as well.
So when can we expect to finally have the documentary in our hands? It was nice to hear that the United States action figures, the Peter Vincent figures, have gone out, so they should be, by the time you're listening to this show, you should already have your figure if you're listening in the continental United States.
Yeah, you should do. Yeah.
Okay.
The UK people have obviously already receiving theirs because when we're UK based, that's next day delivery. So they've already started to get in theirs, and that's filtering through Facebook now. People are posting pictures and whatnot. So the States should have that. Well, by the time this goes out, you should have it by then. Normally it takes like seven days. So when people do order from Cult Screenings, the average time is about 7 days really for delivery. I mean, it can take a little bit longer.
Okay.
Sometimes it's 5 days. It really depends on how fast Royal Mail are and how fast, obviously, when it goes overseas.
Yeah.
So, regards to your question about Fright Night, I mean, that all the extras are completely done. Fright Night's in the can now, so it's through the stage now of obviously getting the disc ready. Only takes 2 weeks of our disc makers, who are a big company in the UK who do a lot of things for Sony over here. So it only takes a couple of weeks.
Oh no, Sony! Oh my God!
No, they're not Sony. They do things for Sony.
Okay.
They do things for Sony UK, so they're not actually Sony. They're an independent company who have been amazing. They're amazing with Leviathan. They're fantastic, and I think that product, regards to how it looks and the feel of it, is very professional. And they are a professional company, so they're going to be handling that for us again. And they are very fast, and the product always looks great.
Okay.
So we are looking up. So we go into the States on the 24th of July to film RoboDoc, and obviously because we're away and the whole crew's away, when we get back in mid-August, the documentary should be here then. So it should start shipping by the end of August.
Okay.
It better do, because Tom Holland needs copies. He's going to a big show in September with Chris Sarandon and William Ragsdale and Amanda Burst and Stephen Jeffries, and he wants his. So I'll have Tom on my back if they're not ready, as well as the fans. So that's all been well, and that's scheduled as we are to this day. All going to plan. Everything's running to plan.
Maybe the
book's ready as well.
Maybe the documentary will give incentive to a company like Shout Factory, who's been doing great with horror movies and giving them proper treatments. Maybe they'll pick up Fright Night and Fright Night Part 2 and finally give us a great release for both films, because Twilight Times released Fright Night, but it was limited copies, and they overcharged, and just I'm not going to get into it, but about the whole thing with Twilight Times.
Yeah. I mean, the weird thing about Fright Night 2 is that it wasn't really. I mean, it got a VHS release back in '89, very limited, and then it kind of vanished and went on to terrestrial television and cable television, and then it came out on DVD in a really, really low res copy, taken from the VHS Master. Came out in about 2001.
Yeah.
Artzan, I think it was the company, and then it vanished again for years, and then suddenly appeared online. Was a HD kind of version of it in full widescreen, the original format it was filmed in by Mark Irwin, which he believes was lost. That appeared online as a kind of torrent, and now it's being released by the Germans, and that's coming out. And I mean, I've got a version of it I bought from Germany last year, and it's the HD widescreen version of it. The Germans are releasing it officially, because that was kind of, I think it was a bootleg kind of version. Yeah. No one really knows who owns it, which is kind of strange. I'm not sure how the Germans have got it.
So jealous.
They found it somewhere. But, I mean, it's Region Zero as well, so it's Blu-ray. So, go on to eBay. I'm sure it'll be on there regardless of when that comes out. But it's kind of strange, because we've looked into it ourselves, obviously making this. And Tommy Lee Wallace himself, the director, has looked into it, but kind of the rights of it kind of vanished when uh, Jose Menendez died and Coleco Pictures vanished and went bankrupt. It kind of
Is
the
it
rights
public?
vanished as well.
Is it public domain?
No, it's not. I mean, there's rumor about Lionsgate owning it. Was a rumor, but no one can really confirm that, which is interesting. It's definitely owned by somebody. It's probably when that company liquidated, it got obviously catalogued by an archive by somebody. I said it is kind of at the moment people talking about Lionsgate, but I think it really depends on does that studio or any studio think does it warrant a release? Now I think it does because I think there's a massive fan base for it. I mean, you've seen with the Twilight version of Fright Night, it was limited to 5,000 copies, sold out overnight, which
Yeah.
is amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing. Considering that film's been on DVD for years and been re-released so many times, that was sold out instantly. So you kind of think, I think if Fright Night Part 2 came out, it would sell out. So, we're hoping the documentary gives some gravitas to it as well. And fans like, you mentioned your friend who hadn't seen hopefully people will kind of try and look for it and get a message out and maybe get something online to try and push it. I mean, the reason why Return of the Living Dead came out in 2001 on VHS. I'm losing it today. On DVD
Yeah.
by MGM was because of fan petition. The fans did a website and got petitioned for it, and got to support Dan O'Bannon. And that's why that was released after so many years of being on VHS.
Yeah, and it just came out on Blu-ray again through Scream Factory.
Yeah. We've done a commentary on it. Myself and Chris Griffiths. We did a commentary on the Shout Factory version, which probably bored people to death. So we were involved in that one. And it's a great release as well. But it's been released a million times. It is one of my favourite films. I've been invested in it for years, obviously with the books and the documentary, and obviously knowing Don and whatnot. And I'm heavily invested in it. But it's kind of it's been done. I think this is the last time it's going to be done now because there's nothing more can be done on it apart from Diane O'Bannon, who's Dan O'Bannon's widow. She spoke to me and told me that apparently she offered the company who released it the original audition tapes, which she's got in her house, the auditions for all the principal cast.
Oh, wow.
And they didn't want it. So maybe MGM are holding out for a future release. Obviously, MGM are obviously involved in Shout's release or Screen Factories. Maybe they're holding out for a future release. I don't know. But there's extra footage out there, which Diane's got, which fans would love. So it's kind of just strange. That's the only thing I think extra you could actually get from that film, because there's a work print edition of it, which is only 20 minutes difference, and it's a few alternative takes. But regards to Dan O'Bannon's shooting, it was really shot and edited, shot for shot, based on the script. So there's not really much more out there to do on it. So this might be the last ever version. I don't know.
I've run into Dan O'Bannon's wife too. And it was in 2013 was the last time I saw her. It was at a convention or a festival here in Rhode Island called Necronomicon. It was a celebration of H.P. Lovecraft, and she was here, and I got to take a ride up in an elevator with her. We were talking about her husband, and then I was out on the street enjoying the festival later that evening, and I ran into her again at the water fires, and we walked along the water fires of Rhode Island talking about her husband. She was so full of life and really, really energetic and really happy to talk about her late husband, and she was telling me about the prints that she has and things that she's been holding on to, and she wishes the studio would pick them up. And I talked about this with someone else besides you, and they said, yeah, I've had that same conversation. She's got like this archive of her husband's stuff that nobody wants.
It's amazing. It shows what the industry is like to a degree. Obviously, that it's, and a lot of these projects I put together, these new releases of these films, they have limited budgets, and someone like Scream or Shout Factory have a limited budget. They are dictated to a degree by MGM about what goes on there and what's spent. So, I think that's a limitation. But, Diane's an amazing woman. She has been so good to us over the years, since we first started talking to her in about 2008. We were talking to Dan as well, obviously, and then he passed away in 2009. But after Dan passed away, she so much supported the first book, and, she's actually done a little bit more for the new book as well as an ending for us and afterward. A great lady. But, yeah, it's archives of stuff. And, one day I'm going to grab her and go over and look at it and go for the archive myself, That's one day I will. Which is just brilliant. It fathoms belief really that why a studio wouldn't grasp that. And I mean, and Dan himself doesn't get the credit he deserves. This is the
Mm.
guy who wrote Alien. This is the guy who did the script for Total Recall, and just doesn't get that kind of credit. And it's just a shame, really. I think one day he will. I think one day he'll be recognised more and more for his work and what he's done.
You know what?
Uh,
I think someone needs to make a documentary about him.
yeah. There's a lot of material there about Dan. Yeah, so you never know. You never know what might happen one day.
And of course, the next thing you guys have coming out next year is RoboCop, and this is going to be
Yep.
based on the original 3 films. Are we also covering like cartoons and TV series and the remake?
Yeah, we're touching upon the TV series very lightly again because obviously a time constraint.
Yeah.
We've got over 40 odd people now to interview in a 3-week period. We are touching slightly on the cartoons, obviously, as part of a legacy. And we're literally going to just hint at the remake. I think because, again, there's a very kind of division with fans, really, about what they think of the remake. And I know
It
a lot
sucked.
of hardcore fans, of the original don't appreciate it. And I mean, our director, Christopher, he's Anne Eastwood, obviously, is now our editor as well as creative producer. They are hardcore RoboCop fans, and they really want to concentrate on the first 3 films. Really, it's going to be the first film is going to be the main element, and then we're going to have very small sections on 2 and 3. 2 is going to be a little bit more in depth than 3 because 2 has never ever been looked at really.
No. Yeah.
And obviously we're lucky to get Frank Decker and Tom Noonan, Nancy Allen on board for that. So that's going to be really great. Obviously Mark Irwin as well. Obviously Irving, I can't remember his name now, has passed away, a director. So obviously Mark's the next best thing for that as cinematographer.
And
So yeah,
you have Peter Weller, Buckaroo Banzai is coming out on Blu-ray finally,
Yeah. I mean, Peter. We're still in negotiation with Peter. So again, he's kind of like our Clive Barker at the moment. Apart from not being ill, he's absolutely healthy. So he's kind of like our. I'm not sure if the Americans know who Lord Lucan is. Lord Lucan was an aristocrat back in the 1970s, what disappeared in the UK. And every time we want to look for something now, we always say you can find Lord Lucan, Bell, and find that person. And he's our Lord Lucan to a degree, Peter, because we've got him. We've been speaking to him. We've got everybody else on board, literally everybody, but Peter at the moment. He's holding out, but we know we're going to get him. And the rest of the cast and crew have been speaking to him. He's really interested. He's just obviously tying down. So we've got when we get out there, we're going to get timed down and get him.
If you don't get him, what will that mean? Because the documentary about RoboCop and you can't get the guy who played RoboCop. Will you go forward? Will you just end the project? I mean, I can't even imagine you not putting him in there.
Well, we're not going to end the project because again, we've got 40 odd people who made those films possible. We've got director Paul Verhoeven, we've got the writers Ed Newmar, and you've got all these people who are key people to it. Phil Tippett, Nancy Allen, Ronnie Cox, Kurtwood Smith, people who've never been interviewed for before as well. I always say these projects, if people, we only do so much as makers of these documentaries. We can push people, we can ask people, we can try and engage people as much as possible, and we are physically talking to Peter. If Peter decides for any reason of his own that he doesn't want to do it, if he decides that's his prerogative. At the end of the day, RoboCop, without sounding negative towards Peter, because I'm desperate for him to be in it. The legacy of RoboCop is bigger than one person.
Uh-huh.
There's loads of archiving footage of Peter we can use. Lots of stuff from Paul Salmon, who was the Orion executive. He's got loads of archive interviews. We will have to use them. I'll be disappointed, but that will be solely in Peter's court, really, if he decides not to do it. The moment it's very positive, and the vibe isn't much there that he wants to do it. But again, as I said, if he doesn't want to, that's entirely down to him. I know for a fact we couldn't have done any more. Mikey Perez, who's working for us now, and I said to you before, Mikey has worked on every documentary going. We never hired him before to work with us? He's started working with us now on RoboDoc. He's amazing. This guy can find anybody. This guy has found, people who have never been interviewed before on RoboCop 1, 2, and 3. and he is working very closely with Peter at the moment and Peter's people. If Michael can't get him, no one can get him really. I do know there's a vibe that Peter has spoke so much about RoboCop over the years that he said he'd never talk about it again. But now he seems to be obviously moving towards RoboCop again. Done a few conventions recently. He's doing one in Germany as well, which we're doing ourselves in November. And you hear different things of different people, but we've heard off very close people to Peter that he's obviously keen to do it and he's interested. So just keep our fingers crossed. But as I said, projects move on, projects have to happen, and there's 40 other people, nearly 50 people actually, who are really valuable and valid to this project, who want to give their views on the legacy of that film, and someone like Ronnie Cox who played Dick Jones, one of the greatest villains in film. You got to have him. So, yeah, see what happens.
What are your plans after RoboCop?
I think to rest.
There's so many other cult films though that could use it. I mean, you guys are doing this, of course, based on franchises. RoboCop's a franchise. Fright Night is, I guess, kind of a franchise. It's a cult film following. Leviathan is. I mean, Hellraiser is definitely a franchise. It has 9 films with a 10th one on the way, and which I'm dreading what the 10th one will be like. Yeah. What about doing it based on a single person? You know what I mean? Like Wes Craven, who passed away recently, and there's a book that he wrote about himself, but Wes Craven has such a huge body of work. Or, Clive Barker, who couldn't be in your documentary because he's sick, but maybe you can do a documentary about Clive in his life and people who knew him and maybe you can get Clive to record some words. I don't know what his health situation is like now, but...
I mean, but we obviously, as a production company and having so many key people involved with us who are dedicated to film, part of our crew, we have lists of different projects we'd like to do. I mean, I've got my kind of wish list of projects. Chris has as well. So does Adam, and so does Eastwood. So, again, on individuals, is an opportunity. We're talking to Steve Johnson at the moment about documentary on his work, about special effects in the 80s, how they were all prosthetics and makeup, how it went changed to CGI in the 90s, 2000s, and it's slowly coming back. I mean, and Steve Johnson's life and the films he's been involved in, from American Werewolf to Fright Night, to Species, to The Stand, to Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, all that stuff he's been involved in, and he's got all these key people who he's worked with, like John Landis, Stephen King, Barker. He's interesting to us, and he wants to work with us on a documentary. That's a possibility, and we're going to have a meeting with him when we see him in the summer. We're also talking. I mean, people might laugh. We're also talking to Gary Goddard about Master Universe, about the legacy of that, what went wrong with the film, what could have been different. How that is becoming a cult classic. And,
they're covering that though in the upcoming Power of Grayskull documentary.
Yeah, I think that obviously they're doing a very light touch on it with regards to they're doing obviously about all the franchise completely, aren't they, with the figures?
True, and they announced a couple months ago they got oh my God, I forgot his name, the actor who played He-Man, Ivan Drake. Dolph Lundgren, yeah, sorry.
Dolph's great.
They got Dolph. That was a huge thing for them because Dolph Lundgren is a granted he's making a lot of B movies or whatever, and he makes the Expendables once in a while, but he's still a working actor. He's still very hard to get, and they got him, and that was a huge thing for them.
Getting people like that on board your projects is huge, and again, I don't think people realise how hard it is to get people. And I think, we get a lot of people going, why so-and-so not in it? What about so-and-so? But it's so hard to get hold of people and engage them because also you've got to go through agents. And unfortunately, documentaries, and the kind of unwritten rule about documentaries, people don't get paid. People don't normally get paid to be part of a documentary because they're talking about their own work and promoting themselves, promoting their project. And as you know, projects like ours and projects like other documentaries are funded majority by independent funding or on Kickstarter. So start paying people massive salaries to be in it, massive fees you can't afford. So getting people like Dolph on board, and Dolph would done that for free, is an amazing coup really for people. I said it's very hard to get through agents who are there for one reason only, is to make money. And some agents are absolutely brilliant. They'll support and they know that this, if we're doing documentary, also helps promotion of that person as well because They get on Facebook, they get on social media, their face gets on these documentaries, people are talking about them again,
Yeah.
convention circuit and whatnot, and it does help them regards to, especially if they're in that kind of circuit already of conventions and whatnot. Some agents are brilliant. Other agents might have a kind of B-movie star who, we love as a kind of an iconic kind of actor or actress, but they still want to get their 15% and 10% cut and want to charge you $5,000. I mean, I won't mention names, but we've approached people over the years for documentaries, and we've had agents say to us, "Oh, yeah, we'll do it for £15,000, we'll do it for
Oh my
£20,000."
God.
That's our budget gone, and when you hire somebody on a fee like that, you're actually contracting someone to do it with you then. And that's when things get messy, The whole point of these documentaries is meant to be very informal. It's supposed to be kind of a community kind of thing. And you don't want people to feel kind of contracted to do stuff with you and act in a certain way. You want people to be relaxed. And I think when the money's involved in a contract, people behave differently for obvious reasons. And so do you as a filmmaker, because you want your money's worth, really. So I mean, we've been lucky, with people. So we had that couple of experiences, but having people like Tom Holland on board for Fright Night, from the moment we started, that really secured us, everybody, because people didn't ask for anything because Tom was pushing it. And again, having someone like Ed Newmar on board for RoboDoc, because he's on board, people come on board then because they know it's a genuine and legit kind of project.
Yeah, I mean, are you aware of the unmade Tim Burton Superman movie?
Yeah, I've seen the documentary about
Yeah.
the amazing documentary, yeah.
Yeah, and he God, I mean that took so long to get made because the money that they had to raise to pay licensing for Superman. Yeah. I mean, granted, the Superman shield itself doesn't really appear so much, even like on the DVD cover. But obviously, I mean, there was like he was constantly talking about like licensing is what a lot of the money is being paid for, and I'm sure I can't imagine Tim Burton did an interview for free.
No, I mean I've heard of some people who ask for. I mean, some famous directors who ask for a fee. And which we're going to ask for a fee. I mean, but then again, it's if you got the money to pay for it, isn't it? It's really if you got that, you can afford to do it.
Yeah.
We have been very lucky, as I said. We've been lucky, and because we've now established ourselves and have contacts in that kind of industry, we know people, and we kind of get to people a little bit easier now. And having people like Mikey on board is great. But I can see why, Tim Burton might have charged, might not have charged. You just don't know. I wouldn't like to say because obviously I wasn't involved in it.
True.
I do know that.
I am speculating, people.
Yeah. I do know a project which has been made. I'm not going to mention his name. Which I've got some friends who are working on it. The director, who's very famous for all, let's say, for aliens and war films, he's asked for a significant amount of money to be involved in that project, which would probably blow their budget through the roof, really.
Yeah.
It really depends, doesn't it? I mean, I would hope that, and I think we've been saying we've been lucky, but I'll say it again, that people we've approached want to be part of these things because they want to celebrate their work and they know there's a big fan base for it and they know the fans want it. So it can get messy when money gets involved like that, and I think you've got to be very careful. And
now,
it's how you approach things.
When you say being really careful, and this now go into like licensing about documentaries, and this is also a bit of advice for anybody who wants to make a documentary that was listening to this. Do you guys have to pay out a licensing fee to somebody who owns the Fright Night franchise? I'm assuming that's Tom Holland or RoboCop. Or, okay, now you also have this book out coming in August, the American Werewolf in London one. Do you have to pay a licensing fee to produce that? I mean,
it depends, really.
Because you guys aren't a charity. You're in this to make.
No.
I mean, you're a business. You're going to profit from these documentaries.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it depends really on what you're using for a starter. I mean, if you can make a documentary on anything really, because it's classed as educational. Documentary.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Its sole purpose is its educational product. It's a critique. It's a celebration. So automatically, I can make a documentary now on.
Now, hold on. Let me back you up there. Does that include United Kingdom law and United States law?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And what happened in about 2011? In America, some documentarians were sued by a studio for making a documentary and using footage from their film. And they actually won the case, for the filmmakers did, because in the court of law stated that the makers were using footage to promote and celebrate the original film, and they need to use the footage from an education point of view because they were using it in context what they were talking about. So if we're talking about Pinhead, the makeup of Pinhead, and how many pins he got in his head, we can technically show footage of Pinhead with his nails in because it's in context. If we use that footage, say for the opening credits, we can't use it because it's not in context. Then it's basically being used for to promote us more than obviously the subject matter. So it's a very kind of weird balance, really. I mean, fair use comes in a massively regards to documentaries and books because they're educational and because you're celebrating. I mean, we've seen what's happened recently with Paramount Pictures and the Star Trek people who were making that. And actually, that's now kind of been settled now because the fans have said, hang on a minute. And obviously, the director of Star Trek 3 and J.J. Abrams has said, these are fans making projects for fans. Don't turn your fans away. That's going to help filmmakers massively now. That is what's happened there with Paramount.
Yeah,
and that's going to make a big difference, I think, for filmmakers. For documentarians, I said, it really depends. Something like Superman is a massive franchise with a massive licensing. Something like Batman would be as well, because obviously that is massive still, and it's got a big. It's still making a lot of money for the filmmakers. It's still making a lot of money regards to comics and spin-offs and films.
There's another documentary that someone could make because this has happened so many times. Superman being an example, and they could probably touch upon it a little bit in their film. But what about a documentary about the superhero movies that have never happened, that got the script, you know what I mean, got the casting, and then they fell apart?
I mean, how many other films have done that? There's so many films what have got to that stage where you hear about them and you hear rumors and you get excited for them, so they vanish. They're gone. And as a film fan, I'm a big film fan, of course. You kind of get so disappointed. And there's loads of those superhero films over the years that you're hearing about, and you go through your old magazines, your old film magazines, and I mean, I've got copies of Fangoria. Obviously, we've been in our research. I mean, it's talking about films that are going to come out, but there's one magazine which is in front of me now talking about Prince of Darkness Part 2, John Carpenter's Part 2, Prince of Darkness. That never happened, yet there's an article about it, about competition for people to write it in Fangoria. So it's kind of like, that's the business, unfortunately. And the business is a strange one. Again, we've been lucky, a lot of people we've been involved with our projects have been producers we've had on board straight away. So having them on board makes it legit, and the writers. A lot of the images we use are from personal archives, or obviously promotional images we do for purposes to promote. So it really depends. We've had to pay licensing before, and we've also obviously used and utilised fair use, and we've utilised obviously the new legislation that's come out regarding fair use. Sorry, regarding documentaries, and the new kind of the laws that come out on that, which help filmmakers and are there for a reason. And I would say to anybody who wants to make a documentary, and I gave advice to the people that made the Pet Cemetery documentary a few years ago.
Yes, that's coming out actually in a couple weeks finally on for the early subscribers. And in fact, John and Justin have been on the show too.
When John messaged me a few years ago asking, what my opinion about moving forward that project, because obviously of licensing and kind of copyright, and I just said to him, listen, at the end of the day, go and do it. You've got, as long as you get the cast and crew on board, you've got producers on board, and you're using things in context, you're using fair use, you're not taking advantage of the footage that you're using, and it's all obviously in context of what you're talking about. At the end of the day, if a studio does get itchy about it, they've got to prove as well that you are being detrimental to their project, but a project which is celebrating. If we did a documentary which was really criticised for it, and we were battering, I don't know, Hellraiser, saying it was rubbish and terrible acting, terrible writing, that's completely different. That's something which is destroying a franchise and getting a message out there for the public. Actually, this is a bad film. What we're doing, people like John as well, people like Tommy Hudson, and Tommy's been through it as well. And you know what Tommy's done? He's done massive amounts of work in regards to Nightmare on Elm Street and whatnot. Exact same approach we've taken from Tommy is you celebrate the movies, you celebrate the cast and crew, you get them on board, you let them do the talking as well. They are talking about their film. You're not criticising it. They're being open and honest, and it's their views. And that works, and that has worked for a lot of documentarians over the last few years. And as you see now, a lot of documentaries coming out which are fan-made. They're not studio-supported. They are fan documentaries. Clean up the streets, people working on that who we know have done an amazing job on that. It's taken them 8 years to do that. 8 years to make a documentary. And again, they have worked their backsides off, doing it the right way, going through the right channels, obviously getting support off the cast and crew. So that's what you need to do. Don't be scared of doing stuff. When we did the first book on Return of the Living Dead, we got so much interest of publishers who wanted to do it, who then got cold feet because of the copyright issues. Because, again, Return of the Living Dead is kind of in limbo with MGM. Who owns the rights? The story rights are owned by Dan O'Bannon. The film rights are owned by Tom Fox, who's dead, so his estate owns it. And then the distribution rights are owned by MGM, who inherited it from Orion and people like that. So, and people went, "Oh, no, we can't do that." We kind of worried. And then the people in the end what published it said, "You know what? One, if they come and if the studios are start getting obviously itchy about it, we'll deal with them, and we'll put our case forward regard to what we're doing and why we're doing this project." And again, with books, it's easy to do because it's about celebrating and it's educational. That was a very long answer, so I do apologize.
No, that's fine. That's something I've always wondered, and I just I never thought about that. I think I heard that before, that documentaries about films and book documentaries too, because books get away with a lot because it's just print.
Yeah.
As long as you cite your facts in the back, and you're not citing Wikipedia or IMDb, you can cite like something as simple as TV Guide or whatever, but you still, as long as you cite your facts. Books get away with being called book documentaries get away with being called educational. I never thought about movies being that way too, because you could take RoboCop and its social commentary and I hope that maybe the professor would ask your permission, but I'm sure you would probably be like, absolutely, show it to a class of filmmakers and be like, we're gonna watch the RoboCop documentary for the semester, and we're gonna break down. I think that would be, I would be honored if I heard that,
I met with a group of teenagers who are studying film recently, and we did a comparative kind of lesson about from the page to screen. We looked at Fright Night, obviously perfect for me to look at Fright Night, got the script, read the script, and then looked at the first opening sequence, how it compared. And I told them, not to promote obviously sales for documentary, but to go and get Leviathan. It's long, but it goes into detail about how a script is formed, how it's translated onto screen, the differences, the changes. And I think that's great for educational point of view. And I hope that people use stuff like Leviathan and Fright Night, enjoy it, but also use it to look at how films are made. And for me, as a fan of film, that's just been amazing for me. I love behind the scenes. Every time I watch a film, every single time, I'll go straight home, get on Internet Movie Database, look at the trivia, look at the behind the scenes stuff. That's what I love about film. I love the kind of how they're put together. And these projects for me have made that very, enjoyable, because I now get so immersed into it. It feels like I was on the set. I mean, the Hellraiser, we lived that for 2-3 years. So it feels like you were involved in that film because how much we were involved in it. And also, when you watch your 9-hour documentary, I'm hoping you really feel what it was like on the set. You really feel what the cast went through, and obviously, and the camaraderie that they had. So yeah, I think it's a great education point of view, and that's what we do for. My business is education. I come from education background. I manage finances and business in schools, but also obviously I deal with young people, in high school age. So this kind of really works for me. Regards to, again, it's educating people on how films are made and how legacies obviously are formed as well.
All your documentaries are fantastic. Have looked fantastic. I mean, Leviathan was amazing, and I'm literally looking forward to Fright Night coming out. Why don't you give away the website so people can go and check out more information about your documentaries?
The best website to go on is www.cultscreenings.co.uk. And that has all of our stuff on there. You can obviously buy the Peter Vincent figure. You can pre-order the Fright Night documentary. You can pre-order the American Werewolf in London book, which is out in August. You can purchase the Triaxon 245 Return of the Dead book from there, and you can purchase the Leviathan as well from there, and T-shirts and posters and whatnot. All the information, obviously, what we do and how we do it, and if you want to be involved in some way. Some of our crew have done exactly that. They've contacted us for the website, showed us their show reels, and they're now part of us because of that very thing. Fans, we're fans of film, as I said before, and we encourage fans to be part of us as well. So any eager filmmakers out there who want to be involved in these projects, who can give obviously time and commitment, we're keen to hear from people as well.
Awesome. Well, hey, Gary, I
Yep.
really appreciate you coming on the show. I'm looking forward to Fright Night coming out. Can't wait for the action figure to come in the mail. I look forward to
Yep.
RoboCop next year as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I really appreciate. These things are great for us because again, it helps promote obviously our work. A little company in the UK, now a very isolated UK. Now we're out of Europe. It's kind of it makes these things make a big difference for us. So I do really appreciate you contacting us and having us on today.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I've been waiting to do this since last year when I got Leviathan. I was like, oh, I have to have these guys on the show. And then when Fright Night came out, I was like, okay, got to get these guys on for Fright Night.
Brilliant.